Hi, my name is Rachelle Smith, entrepreneur, professional speaker, and author. Last time, I highlighted my 23-year fitness anniversary, and what a wonderful anniversary it was. But this time, I'd actually like to shift gears. I'm actually going to make this a signature episode. It was originally going to be part of my Undercover Lesson series, but it is such an important topic, and it applies to us all. That's why I'm just going to make this a generic positive on the importance of learning the lesson, the fact, and actually Dr. Cloud, as I mentioned, I highlighted another one of his chapters. Number one, never go back, and there's 10 different chapters highlighting a specific behavior that you don't want to return to go back to doing because literally it's a waste of time. Number one, as I highlighted out earlier on this year, never return to what hasn't worked. And this time, I actually want to focus on chapter 3. Of course, you can't see it, the writing's too small, but never go back to trying to change another person. And I think if there's, we as human beings, regardless of who we are, where we are, how we're brought up, our backgrounds, education, all of that, there's certain, I would say, pitfalls in areas where we are all vulnerable to falling again into some type of pit, making mistakes. And this is one of them. I mean, I would argue that every adult is is going to make this mistake in some form or fashion. Some form or fashion. I've made it myself. I know many of you, not all of you, if you're honest with yourselves, can relate to trying to change another person. And now you may sit here and say to yourself, well, you know what, Rachelle, I'm not trying to, I don't wake up every day saying, I'm going to change you. I'm going to change this person. Okay, that's, some people do, they're honest with themselves. They have a lot of emotional honesty where they will admit that that's ultimately what they're trying to do. But most people say things like, well, I wish so-and-so were more like so-and-so. Or I wish so-and-so didn't always do this at the time. Well, if I can only just show so-and-so this or that, then they will see the light, and realize the error of their ways or how they can have a different life or go in a different direction. Okay, those are a lot more subtle, but they're ultimately, again, trying to change another person. And folks, like I said, we are all prone to make this mistake repeatedly in our lives. And I know a couple weeks ago in one of my undercover lessons, I again pointed out the outlier concept, and the fact that most people are average. They fall under that bell where you have positive outliers out front, and you have negative outliers out there on the other end. And so, as I pointed out, we've got to accept people for who they are, genuinely accept people for who they are. And I think we as human beings, it's human nature to want to feel approved of, to feel accepted, to feel loved. I mean, those are the big three right there. All right. And so this feeling when you're trying to change a person, what you're ultimately doing is rejecting that person, rejecting their personhood, rejecting who they are. And as I was alluding to in that particular episode on relationships, where there's just so much relational frustration because someone may be a positive outlier and they're paired up with someone who's average. All right. Or they're someone who's average, they're paired up with someone who's a negative outlier. Okay, or again, someone's average and they're wanting a positive outlier. And so those dynamics that exist in relationships, romantic relationships, but they also exist in the workplace and then the community and in friendships. How much time have we all collectively spent, wasted really, trying to change other people? People are who they are. And the best thing that we can do is just, support them, support their personhood. But as I alluded to, again, whether you're hiring someone in the workplace, look for the outliers, look for the overachievers, look for the people who are driven, focused, committed. All right. Don't get someone that's average or even below average, negative outlier, and then complain about what you have. Same is true in a relational situation. Again, it's that wonderful Maya Angelou quote that I heard back in 2005 that changed my life. Okay? When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Okay? We all send out cues. We all send out behavioral cues in terms of what we believe, what our values are. Okay, how focused we are, how driven are we? Are we serious about work? Are we serious about family? Are we serious about career? All right, and those signs can be pretty obvious, but we've just got to listen and follow the signs. All right, because this is something, it destroys relationships. It destroys relationships of all types. Wishing someone were different. Wishing someone were like someone else. Okay, and this is, I mean, human nature. And I'm about to step on some toes here for a quick minute and say, again, as I go back to, someone who may be in a relationship with someone who's average. You may have someone that's average working for you, and you're just this constant frustration because you're expecting more from them. Okay, that old adage of people can't give away what they don't have. So it's essentially a no-win situation because you're expecting someone to be a positive outlier when they are flat out average. All right, and then at some point you are attracted to the average, whether again in a hiring, recruiting situation or in a relational situation. So you've got to ask yourself, okay, have I changed? Have I grown? What is it about this situation where it's no longer, again, this harmony that may have existed at some point? And I'll be the first to admit we all grow. I mean, if we don't grow, and again, we're stuck in the same cycles, we're stuck in the same, relational situations, and we haven't grown, and this can be true in many cases. I mean, when I look back to, again, my younger years, and I think back to things that, and even friendships that I thought, and even during my earlier working years, mentors that I have, I mean, mentors that I had, with all due respect to those people, I look back now, again, because I've grown so much. And I look back now and I'm thinking, wow, and even in relational situations. I mean, and that's why, when relationships don't work out, and I've been there myself, relationships don't work out, and particularly when years have passed and you look back and you think to yourself, as I've done, what in the world was I thinking? And I'll be honest, I mean, that is that is a reaction that I've certainly had. What in the world was I thinking? Or why did I take that job? Okay, that indicates growth. That indicates growth. And this is actually something that happened in 2012. It was so funny. This one guy, he was a military officer that I dated years ago, and he reached out to me. See, this is with social media. That's why I don't have a personal social media, a personal Facebook account. I just have a fan page because from a personal standpoint, I'm not interested in reconnecting with people from my past. I mean, yes, there's certain people that know me for a lot of years, and those are genuine, true friendships, and I want to stay connected to those people, but I'm not interested in being found by people that knew me 20 years ago or whatever. And this guy found me, it was 2012, and sent me a message on LinkedIn. We weren't connected, but he sent me an in message, which allows you to just send a message to anyone, whether you're connected or not. And he sent me this message saying, hello, how are you doing? And I wrote back, forgive me, Lord. And I wrote back and said, oh, I'm sorry. I only connect with and communicate with people that I actually know. So I pretended like I didn't even know who he was because I was sitting there thinking, what in the world was I thinking? But again, that's growth, where I'm able to look back and say, it was what it was, when it was, but I'm not that same person anymore. I have zero interest in interacting with you now. So folks, we've got to look back and we've got to look back and appreciate our growth and realize, again, we shouldn't as human beings always stay in the same mind. We shouldn't have the same mindsets that we had 10 years ago, 20 years ago, unless they're positive, unless they're productive. All right, unless they're life creating and life nourishing and transformative. But the negative mindsets and the negative behaviors and negative relationships, I mean, that's all got to go. I mean, but it's just amazing to sit back and ironically, all right, this past weekend, I told you my brother brought me a Fire Stick. I mean, I love that Fire Stick. I can go on and on about that Fire Stick. That Fire Stick has changed my life. I'm not a big TV watcher, and that, of course, started, as I mentioned, from when we lived in Korea, and it just wasn't something that, we had access to a lot of TV, and particularly American TV, and, the networks and things like that. So ever since then, it's just kind of shifted my TV. But I tend to watch a lot of documentaries and that type of, so I love to learn, and I'm always watching documentaries, love documentaries. But with Fire Stick, I was trying to watch some of the old movies that I used to enjoy as a kid. And I must confess that I used to be a big horror movie fan. That'll probably surprise you. But tried watching a couple of them, and I was sitting there watching, and my brother and I have done this in the past, not with Fire Stick, but just, an old movie or something that we used to watch as kids would come on, and we're texting like, I'm watching so-and-so, and then 15 minutes into the movie, we're sitting there saying to ourselves and texting, the other saying, what in the world were we thinking when we thought this was a good movie? Okay, we've changed. And that's just the nature of change. That is the nature of growth, and that is the nature of change. We all go through phases. We all, again, I loved horror movies growing up. I have zero interest in watching horror movies now. There's a lot of things that we change, we learn, we grow. And so it's just amazing. But we've got to accept people. We cannot waste our lives putting people on the proverbial potter's wheel, trying to change them into who we think they should be. Don't do that to people. Don't do that to people. Don't buy them a book and say, read this. Again, with that going in, buying a book for someone saying, this person really, unless they complain to you or they've confided in you, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling in that area. And again, they've maybe directly or indirectly asked for help in that manner. But if they haven't, if you're just looking at someone saying, oh my gosh, this person needs to change X, they need to change Y. Okay, a very small percentage of the population, when you do that, is going to be responsive. It's going to take that information, that book, that wisdom, that insight, however form it may come, a CD, a book, or a book on CD, whatever, the MP3 download, will take that information and actually use it and allow it to transform their lives. But most people are not going to change based on you doing that. They're just not. They're just not. Again, because there's that whole notion of you don't accept me for who I am. And when you try to change people, and it's so true in life, many cases, they will double down and prove that you can't change who they are. So don't do that. Don't give people unsolicited advice. Don't buy people unsolicited personal and professional growth tools. Don't make them watch these YouTube videos, these Posi-TIPS of mine. Don't buy them books, mine or anybody else's, trying to change people. People resent that. People despise it when other people are trying to change them. It makes them feel inadequate, inferior, insecure, and they don't like it. All right. We all have strengths. We all have weaknesses. And I think it's from a leadership perspective and in any aspect of life, we've got to make sure that we're leveraging people's strengths, but also, again, recognizing their weaknesses. If they communicate to you that, hey, I'm struggling in this area, I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to develop, then okay, yes, provide help, provide assistance, provide books and learning and mentoring and coaching and all of that. But if they're not, you're going to waste your time. I mean, and his like I said, this lesson of not going back to trying to change person, it's just invaluable. It's just, and that's why this is going to be a signature episode, because this is an issue that everybody is going to struggle with at some point, wishing somebody were different, frustrated because you can't change this person or this person won't change. It could be your significant other, it could be your kids, people in the workplace, your friends. All right, we got to set other people free to be who they are, accept people for who they are. Some people are motivated, some people aren't, some people are driven, some people are focused, some people just, again, want the status quo. They don't want to change. Some people want to be average. Most people want to be average. Most people are average, and that's okay with them. And that's okay, ultimately, should be with everyone, because everyone's not willing to be an outlier. They fundamentally don't have the attitude or the aptitude or the desire to be different, to be out front, to be a world changer. Okay, and motivation is so important. And this may surprise you, but I'm just going to share this as I close this episode. Motivation. And this may surprise you, as I stated. I screen out in any aspect of life, whether friendship, just any type of professional working situation, whatever, any relational situation where I'm interacting with another person, I mentally screen out for motivation. Okay, how motivated is this person? And that's something that's incredibly important to me. But I also recognize that, and again, I'm human. Again, I have strengths and I have weaknesses. And one of my weaknesses, it tends to be that I can be very impatient with someone who lacks motivation. People who you got to just get them going all the time and pump them up and all of this. I'm not patient with people like that. And that's why from a professional standpoint and any standpoint, I always screen people out in terms of any type of relational situation and their level of motivation, because I just know it's whatever the relationship is or situation, it's just not going to work. I'm in a situation where I've got to constantly pump somebody up and build somebody up and get them going every day, get them going every week, it's just not going to work. Okay, because I just know myself and I'm going to get tired, I'm going to get frustrated, and it's just going to be a bad situation. But again, so I don't enter in these situations with somebody who lacks motivation and lacks focus and vision and drive, and then try to change them and put them on the potter's wheel, because it's just a no-win for me or that other person in any situation. That's why I look for motivated people. I interact, that screen for that. That's very important. I think that's true. We all need to do that in various aspects of our lives. Whatever values we have, whatever is important to us, we need to find people that share those values. All right? And so, yes, people change. People can be inspired to change. My whole life is built around that. But I also recognize, I don't get on here saying, I got to change people. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. No, I'm going to provide some wisdom. I'm going to provide some education. I'm going to provide some insight and some empowerment. And the choice is ultimately yours, what you want to do with it. And so, folks, again, changing people is a waste of time. There's so many other aspects of life that we get, so many different ways we could be investing our time and not wasting our time. So don't do it making this particular mistake. I thank you so much for your time. Make it a wonderful day.